Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Kama Peronet Exterior. Welcome to our daily lectures. Today is Friday, January 15th. I hope everyone is fine. Everyone is healthy. Remember to continue taking all the necessary precautions whenever you go out. Wash your hands, clean your shoes, change your clothes, wear your masks, and all the things that we have been doing since last year. Okay, just think that even though the economy and society needs to continue, we still need to take precautions. Okay, very good. I hope everyone has had a great week and you have an even better weekend. So let's begin. Give me 1 second here. Let's start. Today we're going to continue with the following part of the topic that we started the last class. But like I said, we're going to see more grammar things this week, this class. And of course, I'm also going to give you some expressions and some templates that you can use to talk about routines and to talk about maybe, especially templates you can use in your daily meetings. That you have at work. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Carlos Martinez. I'm an English instructor and speaking coach, former team leader at Pacifico University, and currently an EFL teacher at Matepurísima School in Miraflores. So let's begin. We mentioned last time that to talk about routines, we normally use the present simple. We're also going to talk about the past simple today because we can also talk about past routines, things that we did or things that happened normally. Okay. So, like I said, we'll talk about how to use the present simple when talking about daily routines. And what is a routine? A routine is something normal, something that you do every day, things that you usually do at school or work. Like I said, it's things. The key word here is everyday activities. If you do it more than once, then it's a routine. Now, normally, how do we write our routines? We use the present simple. We use the base form of the verb. Like for example, I play, you work, they swim. Okay, but when we use the third person singular, he, she, or it, or proper names, like instead of saying he, we use Carlos, like my name, or she, we use Teresa, for example, or it, we can use the car, the TV, or the cat. We will use the verb but with an S. Okay, so for example, he plays, she jumps, it kicks. Okay, so we have two examples here. He brushes, ES, because it finishes in SH. We give this information in the last class, but we're going to review it again today. He brushes his teeth at 7 o'clock, and I go to sleep at 11 or 11 o'clock. Okay, when we want to make the negatives, we use the auxiliaries do not or does not. When you use these auxiliaries, you collocate the verb without the S, okay? Especially in the cases of he, she, and it, because in I, you, we, they, as we mentioned before, it goes normal. So I work in a bank. I do not work in a bank. He studies German. He does not study German. Notice how we wrote studies in the affirmative and we wrote study in the negative, right? So he does not study German. Okay, so these are the auxiliaries for the negatives, do not and does not. Like the contractions will be don't and doesn't. Whether you say do not or don't, it's the same. Whether you say does not or doesn't, again, it is the same. Um, the meaning doesn't changes. What changes? Maybe it's if it's formal talk or informal talk. Normally, we use contractions for expressions that are informal. That are common day work, or when you talk with people that are your friends, or you're like in an informal meeting, things like that. Okay. Remember again that I follow your questions and comments through Zoom, but also through the Cámara Peronet, the Commerce Exteriors app. Okay, so I can follow you through both. And again, I will answer your questions as soon as I get them. And sometimes I don't know why in the app it takes a little bit, there's a certain delay, but as soon as I read them, I will try to answer them. Okay, so let's go back. We can also ask questions about routines. Okay, the questions in the present simple use the auxiliary does or do. Okay, do or does. It goes the same as in the negatives. Do is for I, you, we, they, and does is for the third person he, she, or it. We collocate the auxiliary before the subject and the verb goes back to its normal state. Like we mentioned before, whenever there's an auxiliary, whether it's negative or question, the verb will go back to its original form. So, for example, we have the sentence, she runs in the park. She runs. S because it's she. The question, because this is she, will be does. Does she run? Now we write run without the S because we are writing a question, right? So does she run in the park? Yes, she does if it's affirmative, or no, she does not if it's negative, okay? And again, we can say no, she doesn't, and it's the same. The only thing that changes is the formality. Now, with the other pronouns, I, you, we, they, we collocate the verb in the normal form. They watch TV. Do they watch TV? We use do because again we're using they. It could be I, you, we, and they. Do they watch TV? Yes, they do, or no, they do not. Okay, if it's affirmative, yes, they do. If it's negative, no, they do not. Okay, or no, they don't. It's the same. Remember that any question that begins with an auxiliary, and this goes for present, past, future, present perfect, any question that starts with an auxiliary will always be answered yes or no. Okay? Any question that starts with an auxiliary will always be answered yes or no. Okay? So, does she run in the park? Yes, she does. Do they watch TV? No, they don't. Okay? Or if I ask you, do you live in Surco? Yes, I do, or no, I don't. Do you study English? You can say, yes, I do, or no, I don't. Do you like movies? Yes, I do. Or no, I don't. Does your mom cook delicious? Yes, she does. Or no, she doesn't. Normally, yes, she does, especially in my house. Okay. So remember, any question that begins with do or does, it's always a yes or no question. Okay. It's always a yes or no question. Very good. Now, we have some examples here. My sister works in a bank. Okay. My sister works in a bank. And the students like to read sci-fi. The students like to read sci-fi. If we go and write the negative, it will be my sister does not, because it's she, my sister does not work in the bank. Notice how we went from works to work. My sister works in a bank. My sister does not work in a supermarket. Okay, so my sister works in a bank and my sister does not work in a supermarket. Now, what will be the question here if I asked you to write the question? Well, the yes no question. Very good. Does your sister work in a bank? Does because we're using he, she, right? Does your sister work in a bank? Okay, and here we wrote that my sister works in the bank, so the answer will be yes, she does. Yes, she does. Okay, because it's affirmative and it's a yes no question because we're starting with does. Very good. Let's go to the other example. The students like to read sci-fi. The students like to read sci-fi. The negative will be what? The negative would be the students don't or do not like to read, well, in this case, romance, just, okay, but yes, it was correct. The students do not like to read romance, okay? The affirmative we have like, and because this is students, I, you, we, they, in this case, they, then they do not like to read romance. And what will be the question? Are we going to use do or does? Very good. Do the students like to read romance? Okay, do the students like to read romance? We have the auxiliary do because it's they. Just like here, we have the auxiliary does because it is she. Now, do the students like to read romance? We have that the students like to read sci-fi and the students do not like to read romance. So, question, do the students like to read romance? Yes, they do, or no, they don't. What does sci-fi mean? Sci-fi means science fiction. Science fiction, like Star Wars is science fiction. Um, the difference between science fiction and fantasy, because sometimes people confuse them. I'm answering a question from Facebook right now, from Anna. Some people sometimes confuse, say, "Oh, that's fantasy, right?" But fantasy normally has to do with magic, with wizards, with dragons. Okay, whereas sci-fi has to do with things that maybe technology that doesn't exist yet. Maybe it will in the future, maybe it won't. But yeah, you can. No, in writing, you let me. All right, I'll answer you in a question, Carlos, in a minute, Carlos. Okay, so just to answer your question, Anna, again, sci-fi means science fiction. Okay, technology doesn't exist, but maybe might exist in the future. And now to answer Carlos, he says in writing is do not, but in speaking is don't. Um, you can write do not and you can write don't. The same as when you speak, you can say I do not or I don't. When do you use one? It depends on the formality. For example, if I'm speaking to my boss, I will normally say I do not. If I'm speaking to my friend, I will say don't. If I am writing an email to my brother, my sister, or a friend, I will write don't. But if I'm writing an email to my boss or I'm writing an email to a client, I would say do not. Okay. So it really the difference comes in the formality. Okay, or who you are talking to or writing to. Okay. Very good. Let's continue. So, do the students like to read romance? In this case, it would be no, they don't. Right? They don't like to. They like to read sci-fi. Very good. Okay, so here are some. This is just some examples of making questions with. But remember, these are yes/no questions. Any question that starts with the auxiliary do or the auxiliary does is a yes/no question. Okay, any question that begins with the auxiliary do or does is a yes/no question. Okay. Do you work at the replay? No, I don't. I work at Saga. Do you like ice cream? No, I don't. I like coffee. Okay. Or yes, I do. I love ice cream, for example. Okay. So any question that begins with do or does is always yes, no question. Let's continue. Now, like we mentioned before, we have do or does for yes no questions, but then we also have WH questions. Okay, when we want to ask specific questions, and this can be used for any tense, for present, past, future. Okay, but just this is an introduction. WH questions are used to ask specific information. Now I don't want to know yes or no. Now I want specific questions. So when I say who, it's when we talk about a person. Okay, so who is that woman? Who are you phoning? Okay, I want to know who. Who is your father? Who is your mother? Um, who is your teacher? Okay, you want to know the person. The person is missing. You want to know the information about the person. Okay, who do you work with? Right, I work with Juan and Pedro. Okay, so when we want to ask information about people, Now we have where, when we want to ask about places, locations, okay? Where do you live? I live in Chorrillos. Where do you study? I study in Miraflores. Where is New York? Oh, New York is in the USA. Where is Iquitos? Oh, Iquitos is in the jungle. Okay, so when we ask for location, we use where. Where do you live? Where are my boots? Notice that the collocation is always before the auxiliary do. Okay, or in this case, the verb to be are. When is to talk about time. We want to know the time. When can I see you? Okay. When did you last see him? Okay, and before the auxiliaries, notice at the beginning. But everything else is the same as we mentioned before. When is your English class? When is your birthday? Oh, my birthday is in June. Okay, when is your father's birthday? Oh, my father's birthday is in a couple of weeks. Okay, so when we ask about time, why? We use why because why? I mean, you want to know the reason, the motive. Why? So you want to ask for an explanation. Why were you late? Why was he late? Why, let's say, why are we in quarantine? Okay, or we are in quarantine because of the pandemic. Okay, so we use why to ask for explanations or reasons. Next, what? What is to ask for something specific. What is your name? Oh, my name is Carlos. What's the problem? Oh, the problem is that maybe I don't have money. What time is it? Okay, oh, it is, and you take the time. Okay, so we want to ask about something specific. How? Will you ask how for manner, for form? How do you do the way? Okay. How do you go from Chorrillos to Callao? Oh, you take the Costa Verde Expressway. Or how do you say soda in Spanish? Oh, soda in Spanish it would be gaseosa, for example. Okay, so you're asking for a manner or form. Which is when you talk about choice. Okay, so when you need to select something. Which is bigger, Totus or Metro, or which is more expensive? Um, let's say Ripley or Sara. Okay, so you want to have a selection. You want to choose. Um, how many? How many is for quantity, amounts, quantity. How many? How many students live in Surco? 15. Okay. Oh, and how many brothers do you have? Oh, I have three siblings, two brothers and one sister. Okay, so we use how many for quantities, and how often is for frequency. And frequency is something that we're going to see in a minute because, like I mentioned before, um, routines are things that occur more than once. Okay, and this is frequency. How much is for quantity but for money? Okay, for quantity but for money. So no, in English there are things that are called countables and uncountables, and I've mentioned this in prior lessons, but we're going to go to that again eventually during this new season. For example, if you can count, you say you use how many. For example, people. They say one, two, three, four, five, six people. How many? But for example, the air or liquids. Okay, we can't count. We can't say one, two, three, four. So no. So when we cannot count, we say how much. Money. Sometimes people say oh, money is money. You can count money. Well, you can count soles or dollars or pounds, but money, no, you can't say one money, two monies, three monies, no, right? So the word money will be how much? How much money do you have? Okay, so how many, how much are for quantity, but how many is for countables? How much is for things that you cannot count? Okay, hopefully I answered your question, Carlos. Thank you for that clarification. And again, how often is for frequency? How many times does something repeat? Okay, how often do you go to the gym? Oh, I sometimes go to the gym. Or how often do you eat pizza? Oh, I eat pizza every weekend. How often do you visit your parents? Oh, I always visit my parents. Okay, so for frequency to say how many times something repeats. Okay, that's how often. Now, like I mentioned before, when I said frequency, is because we're going to talk about that in a minute, because routines normally repeat, so we need to talk about frequency. Now, to finish the present simple, here are the spelling rules for the third person. Remember he, she, and it. Now, the majority of the verbs, all you do is collocate ts, work, works. When a verb finishes in ch, s, sh, x, or z, or z, it's if you're British, you're going to add es. Watch, watches, pass, passes, relax, relaxes, rush, rushes. When a verb finishes in y, but you have consonant y, okay, notice the consonant y, you're going to change the y to I, and then you're going to collocate es. Study, studies. But when you have vowel, vowel, a, e, I, o, u, vowel, when you have vowel y, you don't change anything, you just collocate the s, plays. Okay, so remember, when the verb finishes in y, but it's consonant y, you're going to change to I, and then you're going to add es. But when the verb finishes in vowel, you're going to change nothing, just add the s. And then we have some irregulars: do, does, go, goes, be is, am, is, are, and have becomes has. Okay, so I do, my brother does. We go, my mother goes. I am, he is, you are. And for example, we have a car, she has a bike. Okay, so it changes because they are irregular. Okay, luckily in the simple present, these are the only irregulars that we have. Okay, very good. So now let's go into the next topic, which is the simple past, and we're going to try to finish quickly. The simple past is used for, like its name says, it's some actions that are finished, but the actions may repeat in the future. That's why I always like to clarify this, because there's a tense called used to, where it's also in the past, but that won't happen again. Okay, but we'll see that eventually. So we use this sense to talk about actions that are finished and might happen or not. It depends, but the possibility exists. How to form. The main rule is that every verb in English, there is only one form in the past tense, and that is different than Spanish, okay? Um, in Spanish, every verb, every noun, for example, every verb is different depending on the person. In English, as you can see in the past, it's all the same. I wanted, you wanted, he wanted, she wanted, it wanted, we wanted, they wanted. So in the past, the verb is the same for all the pronouns, okay? So I can say I wanted, Juan Carlos wanted, Pilar wanted, the cat wanted, the government wanted. So it's the same. Okay, and this happens for all the verbs, whether they're regular or irregular. Okay, the only verb in the past that has two forms is the verb to be, that has was and were. You remember in the present it was I am, he, she, it is, we, you, they are. Now there are only two: I, he, she, and it was. You, we, they were. Okay, so now we have to. But then the others, it is the same. Okay, as you can see, we add ed, and then it's the same verb for all the pronouns. Okay, that is something different than, for example, in Spanish, where in Spanish every person would have a different conjugation of the verb. Okay, so that is something to keep in mind, and that makes a little bit the English grammar a little bit easier. Now, for example, the past tense regular verbs. In this is now here comes a little bit complicated, and we mentioned the last time. In the past, we have regular verbs and we have irregular verbs. The regular verbs follow a rule, which we're going to mention, and the irregular verbs you have to memorize. Okay, so to change the regular verb into the past tense, normally we add ed. Okay, so we have play, played, cook, cooked, rain, rained, wait, waited. Okay, now, there are some exceptions that I'm going to explain to you right now. For example, we have last night I played my guitar loudly and the neighbors studied. Okay, so we have last night I played my guitar loudly and the neighbors studied. Notice that we have play is the main verb and study is the main verb, but here we have play and then ed. But here we have study but then we change something, okay? Now, what happens is the same as in the present. Normally, you're going to add ed, but when the verb finishes in vowel a, e, I, o, u, vowel y, we are going to change nothing and just collocate ed. But when it is consonant y, okay, consonant, all letters except for the vowels, consonant y, we're going to change the y to I, and then we're going to collocate ed. Okay, so this is studied, I, ed, because it's consonant, but here played because it's a vowel one. Okay, then she kissed me on the cheek. Again, this is a normal verb with ed. And now it says, it rained yesterday. It stopped late at night. Notice how we have rain and ed, but here, this is the verb stop, but then we have another P, and then we have ed. Now, what is the rule here? That normally you collocate ed, but if you have this combination of consonant, vowel, A, E, I, O, U, consonant, and only one vowel in all the verb, okay, remember, consonant, vowel, consonant, and only one vowel in all the verb, you are going to duplicate the last consonant, and you're going to collocate ed. Okay, and then we have Angela watched TV all night, and John needed to go to the restroom. Now there are three different ways of pronouncing the ed at the end of the past tense. We also, I need to mention that we also saw these in the prior pack of classes that we had. Just remember that you never say John watch it TV. No, we only say the et when the verb finishes in d or in t. Okay. For example, wait. Give me a second. Wait t. So now we say waited, wait, waited, or need, needed. Okay, so we only say it when it's T or D. For all the others, we're going to say T or D. Like for example, played with a D, played, or studied, or for example, stopped. Now it's a T, stopped, rained, rained, stopped. So these are the two sounds here, the three sounds of English of the past tense. The first is the d, rained, rained. If you want to make sure, you can say rained, but rained doesn't sound too proper, so it should be d, rained, rained, and stopped, stopped. Okay, rained and stopped. And then we have or watched, watched, and when we have the d sound, needed or waited. Okay, as I said, we have seen this before. Maybe one day we're going to do a pronunciation class again to review these these details. Okay, very good. So the next thing, negatives, very simple. We use didn't or did not. It's the same. Okay, remember we use did not for formal communications, didn't for informal or colloquial expressions. To make a negative sentence in the past tense, this is the same for regulars or irregulars. It doesn't change, okay? Except with the word to be, when we're going to use was not or were not. Okay, now compare. Let's, in the present, they don't live in Canada. In the past, they didn't live in Canada. So the verb again, not base form, we only use the different auxiliaries. If I listen or if I see don't, immediately I know it is negative and in the present. And if I read or listen didn't, immediately I know that is negative but in the past. Okay, so the auxiliary is going to tell me if it's negative or positive, and if it's the present or the past. That's why it's very important to know which auxiliary you are using. Okay. Next, both don't and doesn't again transform into didn't. So notice in the present we have I don't, he doesn't. But in the past we only have one auxiliary, didn't. Again, for all. I didn't, he didn't, you didn't, she didn't, we didn't, it didn't. Okay. So notice how in the present we have two auxiliaries for the negative, but in the past we have only one auxiliary for the negative. adjectives, okay? So for example, you don't need a mechanic, you didn't need a mechanic, okay? So all we write is all we change is the auxiliary. You don't walk to work, you didn't walk to work, he doesn't, because it's he doesn't speak Japanese, he didn't speak Japanese, okay? Again, notice the verb always in the base form, need, walk, speak, and what is different is the auxiliary. The auxiliary is going to tell the listener or the reader if it's affirmative or negative, and if it's present or if it's past. Okay, now examples of negative sentences: I didn't want to go to the dentist, she didn't have time, you didn't close the door, he didn't come to the party. You can also say, I did not want to go to the dentist, she did not have time, and you did not close the door, and he did not come to my party. Remember that this has to do more with who you're talking to. It has to do with the formality of the sentence. It has to do with the formality of the writing, okay? But both are correct. Very good. Now for questions, again, just like we have do or does in the present, in the past, we have the auxiliary did. We use did to make questions in the past tense, and this is for regular or irregular, it's the same. And for example, do they live in France? Did they live in France? The same. Notice they live in France. They live in France. The verb in the base form. The only thing that changes is do or did. If I write do, if I listen or I read do they live in France? Immediately question in the present. If I say did they live in France? Immediately question in the past. Okay, so the auxiliary is going to tell me if it's the tense and if it's a question in this case. Okay, do and does in the present tense, they become didn't. So or did. I'm sorry. This should say did. So for example, if you say in the present we say do you and does he, but in the past did you and did he. Okay, so remember, like in the questions here, do you need a doctor? Did you need a doctor? Do you ride a bike to work? Did you ride a bike to work? So always did. The auxiliaries do and does disappear and they become did. And also remember, any question that starts with did is a yes no question. So did you need a doctor? Yes I did, or no I didn't. Did you ride your bike to work? Yes I did, or no I didn't. Any question that starts with do, does, or did is a yes no question. Okay, yes or no. Do you need a doctor? Yes, I do. Yes, I did. Or no, I did not. Or no, I didn't. It's the same. Now, when you want to ask specific questions, we're going to, remember, go back to the WH questions: what, when, where, why, who, and we're going to collocate it at the beginning. For example, did you need a doctor? Yes, I did. Or no, I didn't. Why? Why did you need a doctor? Oh, because I felt I had a fever. Okay. Or when? When did you need a doctor? When? Oh, yesterday. Yesterday. Okay. Um, and things like that. Okay, so when you want to ask specific questions for a specific information, you're going to collocate the WH question at the beginning of the sentence. In this case, before the auxiliary do, if it's the present. Why do you need a doctor in the present? And why did you need a doctor in the past? Okay, very good. And like this is the last topic, adverbs of frequency. Like I mentioned before, the adverbs of frequency normally go like this: subject, adverb, verb, and complement. And we can use them in the present or in the past. He always went to church. I usually study alone. We sometimes slept late. She never goes alone. Okay, we have the subject, he, I, we, she. The adverb always, usually, sometimes, and never. The verb went. Notice that the verb is in, I mean, it doesn't change that with the auxiliaries because it's an adverb. She always went, usually study, we sometimes slept, and she never goes. And then the complement. Okay, now what are the averages of frequency? The average of frequency tell us how many times something is repeated. Okay, for example, if it repeats 100%, always. If it repeats 0%, never. Okay, if it's 50-50, you're going to say sometimes. Okay, I always study after class. Notice, before the verb. I usually walk to work, before the verb. I normally get good marks, before the verb, normally get. Get normally? No, I normally get. I often read in bed at night. Okay, I often read. Adverb, verb. Never. I read often. No, I often read. I sometimes sing in the shower. Again, adverb verb. Sometimes is an exception because I can also say sometimes I sing in the shower or I sing in the shower sometimes. Sometimes has three positions, okay? But the others normally go before the verb. I occasionally go to bed late. I seldom put salt on my food. I hardly ever get angry. Vegetarians never eat meat. Okay, so this is what I mentioned here before, right? Subject, adverb, and verb. Daniel always passes his exams, but when I use the verb to be, it changes. So if I say Daniel always passes his exams, when I use the verb to be, I'm going to change. Now, he is always good at in school. Okay, so when we use the verb to be, we're going to change. It's the opposite, right? Normally it's adverb plus verb, but when it's the verb to be, adverb. Okay, so remember that, please. When we use the verb to be, it's always going to come after the verb to be. But with the adverbs, with any other verb, regular or irregular, it's going to come before the verb. Okay, and remember, we use average of frequency because it's something we want to say how often. And normally, if it's a routine, it needs to repeat. So, and we can use it. We can use it with the present normally, and we can also use it with the past. It's not impossible. Okay, but normally you're going to see it. If you see average of frequency, it's a normally an indicator that it is present simple or simple present. Okay, very good. And with that, we finish with the grammar part of this class. And now I'm just going to give you some templates for meetings that because I always like to give you some templates that you can use. And here are some templates that you can, if you download the material, you'll be able to see how to introduce a problem. Again, how to introduce a problem. Okay, everyone, let's get started. I think we have all noticed the problem of timelines. Let's turn to a problem that's on everyone's mind, reduced budget. We need to attack a pressing problem today, which is the reduced budget for the T7 project. We know we have all been thinking about the issue of the reduced budget of the T7 project. Today, we're going to discuss or talk about the problem of the reduced budget for the T7 project. Focusing on the discussion on a specific problem. How can we deal with this problem? Any ideas? What are the underlying causes or what are the main causes of the problem? What is the root of this problem? Again, what is the most important, what is the reason? Okay, focusing discussion on a specific problem. Again, what's behind this problem? What's causing this problem? Perhaps we can begin by breaking down the problem. When we say breaking down the problem, this means by separating it into pieces and looking at things individually. Stopping interruptions. Hang on, Mia. Let James finish. Hang on. Hang on is wait. Hold on, Yang. The same. Hold on. Hold on. Can we let Anita finish? I think it is important that everyone contributes. Okay, so we say hang on, hold on. It's like wait a second. Stopping interruptions. One moment, John. Perhaps we can allow Javier to finish. I wonder if we can give Regina the opportunity to finish and let Sarah finish her point. Okay, so these are ways of telling somebody, wait until it's your turn. Okay, to encourage, to motivate, right? I think we are all on the right track. We're in the right direction. We are definitely on the same page now. We're talking about the same thing. I think we're all in the same wavelength. Okay, this is a metaphor that we are thinking the same. We are thinking equal. Okay, rephrasing problems as challenges. How could we cut costs without losing quality? How should we approach this problem without losing quality? How can we meet our deadlines without losing quality? So now we are rephrasing our problems and saying, how can we solve this? Okay. And we are we're challenging, okay, without losing quality, without closing a discussion. We have some great solutions. We've made great progress. I think we solved it. Okay. Evaluating ideas. I would like to hear what everyone thinks. I'm open for feedback. Let's keep in mind the main problem we've defined and let's take a look at the solutions considering what our objectives are. Okay. So these are templates. Again, the parts that are in bold are what you don't change. You only change the part that is not in bold. Expressing negative opinions. I can't see that idea working given that the project deadlines are so tight. So this is the reason why I don't agree. I just can't see this working due to, again, due to, it's like the because It will be very difficult to implement, keeping in mind, okay, keeping and remembering the client won't agree due to, again, because the same due to the high costs involved. And finally, giving positive feedback. True, I think it's a great point. That's right, Sarah. I'm glad you made that point. You brought up a very valid point, Vinod. Okay, so I'm giving you feedback. Okay, I'm telling you, wow, what a great idea. Okay, it's motivating. If you're a leader, if you are the organizer of the meeting, this will motivate the people to encourage them to participate. To disagree, using but. It may be expensive, but I think it could generate, etc. It's a good idea, but we don't have enough budget. I understand what you mean, but so it's a very polite way of saying good, but no. Okay. Agreement, limited agreement. I agree with the main idea, but not to the time frame. I'm not against it, but I see your point. But so now it says I agree, but I want to change some things. Okay, agreement, way to be convinced. I can see what you're getting at. Okay, I know where you're going, but I want to continue listening. On the one hand, I think it's a good idea, but on the other hand, okay, so in this case, everything good, but on this case, okay, not literally the hands. I'm just using my hands to saying that they're giving you two positions. Okay, I just think we need more time. Total disagreement. No, it's possible. I totally disagree. I couldn't agree less, and it's not feasible. It's not feasible. Okay, it's not possible. Very good. Oh, this is the last one. I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's try to brainstorm some ideas. Would anybody like to start? Brainstorm is to let's think about let's create ideas. How do you suggest we deal with this? Does anybody have any ideas? Okay. Maria, you've looked at the problem. Any ideas? What can we do about this problem? Any suggestions? So we're brainstorming. Okay, think. Maybe we should think about it from a different perspective. What if we imagined we had the budget? What would we do? What about trying another direction? Okay, so now we're answering to these ideas. It seems to me that what about if we look and why don't we try plan B? Okay, so now we have started thinking about all these problems and now we're giving our possible solutions. Okay, discussing other points of view. What happens if, others, we do what they suggested? What if we had no constraints? What else could we consider? And are there any points of view? Okay, so we're asking for other opinions. Okay, very good. Thank you. With this, we close this topic. And remember that always we're going to have functions and topics. When we do topics, we're going to dialogues and stuff like that. And in functions, is basically going to be like today, mostly grammar. A very quick review of the grammar because, like we said, in normally um, the present and the past are studied in. If you go to an institute, you will at least study the present in one unit, and the past in another unit. And these units normally take 1 week or two, and we are doing the present and past in a few minutes. Okay, so this is a very quick review. I want to thank you for your participation. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for attending the class and participating both in Facebook and here in Zoom. Next week, oh, January 5th, the date is wrong here. It's Monday, January 16th, 17th, 18th, right? Monday, January the 18th, okay? Yes, Lima's anniversary. Very good. Monday, January the 18th, okay? So if you have any questions, first I want to thank you all. Please continue taking the necessary precautions when you go out, okay? Stay safe for you and for your family. And if you have any questions about the topic, you can contact me through my email, which is say cjmflores at gmail.com, or at my WhatsApp 947-390-436, or my LinkedIn account cjmflores27. Okay, look me up, leave me a message, contact me if you have any questions. I will gladly help you out. No, thank you for your participation. Thank you, Vargas. Thank you, Mr. Balvin. Thank you, Miss Anna, for your participation. And I will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Enjoy and stay safe. Remember, God bless. See you Monday.